Hi, my name is Maria Covarrubias, and I will be talking about Chapter 4, which is titled Sociological Perspectives on Personality. So, what this chapter basically talks about is how personality looks at the relationship between social structure and the individual. And this can be studied in three different ways. The first way is the way society influences the individual. The second way is the way the individual influences society. The third way is the mutual influence between society and the individual. The book also states that there are three models of society that sociologists use to study the relationship between society and the individual. And these three models are the consensus, the conflict, and the interaction model. So, first, I will be talking about Durkheim's anomy theory. So, this starts off as Auguste Comte, Herbert Spencer, and Emile Durkheim all had one common view, which was the organismic analogy of human society. This meant that society is like an organism in biology. So, in other words, human society is composed of many different parts and elements that are all linked together, and some various functions for societal. In other words, human society is composed of many linked parts and elements that all serve various functions for survival and the maintenance of the whole society. So therefore, if one part fails, then there is a disparity in the whole system. So the four parts are functional interdependent of parts to maintain social structure. The second one is group norms to maintain social order and stability. Third one, societal equilibrium rests on consensus, conformity, and adjustment among its constituents. The fourth one, maladjustments of social units are considered as deviant and pathological. So Durkheim also decided to study suicide, and he basically concluded that suicide rates vary based among an individual's social integration and social change. So he basically classified suicide into four types. The first type is egoistic suicide, which he defined that as the individual who lacks close social attachment and meaningful interactions with others, for example, with family, friends, somebody in the community, and things like that. The second type of suicide is altruistic, and he defined it as the opposite of egoistic. So this individual is very high in social integration, and there are actually three categories to this. The first one is the suicide of men who are of old age or have a sickness. The second one is the suicide of women on their husband's death. And then the third one is suicide of followers or servants on the death of their chiefs. So the next type of suicide is anomic suicide, and he defined this as a sudden social change, for example, economic depression, political anarchy, or family disorganization. And then the last type of suicide is fatalistic, and he defined this one as an individual who experienced excessive social regulation, such as a prison and or slavery institutions. Next, I'll be moving on to Merton's typology of individual adaptation. And Merton defined this as one conforming and four alternative modes of behavior. Conformity is the most common mode of adaptation. He defined it as the individual has internalized cultural goals and has the access to means in order to attain these goals. The second one is innovation, and he states that's the most prevalent type of lower class deviance. So basically, this occurs when an individual has taken in a culture emphasis on a certain goal without using any legal means to reach that goal, because it's either not available or not realistic into reaching that goal. The next one is ritualism, which is defined as an individual will lower their own expectations in order to avoid any frustration by a possible failure into reaching the goal. And then the next one is retreatism, which is the least common and the most passive one. And he defines this as the individual who is withdrawn from both aspiring cultural goals and employing institutional means. Next, I'll be moving on to Parsons' general theory of social action and personality system. So he states that the actions of a person are not discrete, but they are rather organized into three functional interrelated systems. So the first one is the social system, which he defines it as it's organized about interactions of actors to each other. Then the second one is personality system, which is systems of motivated action organized about individual actors. The third one is cultural system, which is symbolic patterns created by individual actors and are transmitted among social systems by diffusion and among personalities by learning and socialization among each other. He also states that the key element in personality system is the need disposition, which is defined as the tendencies to orient and act with respect to objects in certain manners and to expect certain consequences from these actions. Next, I'll be moving on to Raymond's 3 character types. He states that each individual has 3 types of characters, and depending on which one society demands on that given moment is the one that will show. The 3 types are high growth, which is tradition directed, for example, high birth rate and high death rate. The next one is transitional growth, which is inner directed, for example, high birth rate but decline in the death rate. And then the third one is incipient decline, which is other directed character, which, for example, a low birth rate and low death rates. Next, we'll be moving on to conflict perspectives on personality. So this includes three main sociological traditions. The first one is the class conflict theory by Karl Marx. Second one, the conflict functionalism by George Simmel. And the third one is the domination / legitimation conflict theory of Max Weber. So the class conflict theory states historical necessity and inevitability of class conflict and social change is mainly due to the unequal access of classes to the means of productions. The conflict functionalism states conflict is normal and functional form of human association. The domination / legitimation conflict theory states social conflict is due to domination that is based on economic class, socioeconomic status, and political power. Next, I'll be moving on to interactionist perspectives on personality. And they state that personality is a function of the interaction between society and the self. And that is it.